We'll open the meeting and our order of business. First off the agenda item is apologies and leave of absence. We do have Councillor Budd online, but we do have a leave of absence from Councillor Matt Sharpen. So could I have somebody move that we accept that? Councillor Sutherland, seconded. Councillor North. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Moving on to item 2 on the agenda, we have community consultation. Tonight we have no one registered for community consultation, so we'll move straight to item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting submitted for approval. Could I have somebody please move that those minutes are a true and correct record? Councillor Brooke, and seconded Councillor North. Any questions about those minutes? Any comments to make? I'll put the recommendation that they're a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 4 on the order of business, disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? We have no disclosures of interest. We'll move straight on to item 5, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. Move to item 6, notice of motion. There are no notices of motion. We'll move straight into council open reports in item 7, environment and planning. Could I have someone move 7.1? Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor North. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to make comment or to speak to that?
Mr Mayor, just to say that this realignment seems to make a lot of sense. Reading through the plan coming from Taruka Road onto Wanuka, I know it's geographically probably closer to Katingal, but with that mountain range and the access point, this makes complete sense.
Anyone wish to speak again? Anyone wish to speak against that report? Any further comments on that report? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Carried unanimously.
Aye.
We'll move straight to item 7.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Impey, seconded Councillor North. Sorry. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Impey?
Nothing to say, thanks. Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation that we attend? We do have to put some names down if there's some council that's interested in attending. So, but is there anyone interested in speaking against that recommendation that we get involved and send someone? No? I'll ask for some names to attend. First of all, I'll say that I certainly will be attending. I'm the chair of Zone 11 of the Murray-Darling Association. Our director, Bruce Logan, will be in attendance. I'm pretty sure Bruce will be. So, are there any other councillors that would be interested in attending that conference? Councillors, then I'll put the recommendation that Bruce Logan, the director, and myself will be nominated as the attendees. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. We'll move straight on to item 8, infrastructure and services, 8.1, which is another water conference. So if I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Move Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Impey. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that? Councillors, before you are able to put your hand up if you're interested in attending this, but normally it's a management conference, and I do know that the director will potentially go and maybe take a staff member or two with him. But if councillors, if you are interested, you can put your hand up to attend that. It really is a management conference, and but I'll ask councillors, is there any interest? There being no interest, I'll move the recommendation that we attend the conference and that the director, Bruce Logan, attend with 2 staff? With 2 staff members. All those in favour say aye. Carried unanimously.
Aye.
We'll move on to item 8.2. Could I have a mover and a second? I move Councillor Brooke, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Brooke, you wish to speak to that? Yes. And I do want, actually, perhaps before you speak, I know that Mr Logan would like to have a few words on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I just want to let you know that on Thursday of last week we received notification from IPART that they actually have made a final determination in relation to the charges levied by Water New South Wales, and it's different to what was in their information document, which I've reported to in the council meeting and in that report. So in the information document that was been reported in there, the IPART were proposing a 3-year determination, and they were looking at, and this is only for Water New South Wales charges only, they were looking at a 1.9% increase plus inflation in 25-26, and then inflation increased by inflation in the 2 subsequent years after that. That's what's reported in the business paper. Now on Thursday, the IPART released their final determination, and they've decided to only do a 1-year determination for Water New South Wales, and they are going to increase the charges for Water New South Wales only by 5.8%, excluding inflation, and that's the final determination, so it can't be changed. And I've presented some numbers in the business paper, but based on that, 5.8%, plus if we assume a 3% inflation, then council will pay, other than not the number that I put in the business paper, it'll be an additional $118,000 next year.
Thanks, Mr. Logan.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and this doesn't include the Water Administration Ministerial Council, Advisory Ministerial Council numbers. IPART hasn't handed down their final determination for those yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Logan, and notwithstanding the report that's in front of us now, which is certainly doesn't actually represent the current position, I would ask the mover and the seconder, would they be happy to withdraw their moving and seconding, and that we as a council ask Mr. Logan to present a further report to council which actually reflects what is the current status from IPART. So are you okay with the mover and seconder withdrawing that?
Yeah, I'll agree to that.
Could I have... So, Mr. Logan, we'll withdraw that report from this meeting, Mr. General Manager, and we'll call for a future report. Thank you. We'll move to item 9, and we've got governance and strategy, 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor North, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm disappointing to have to write off so much money, and I understand the debts can't be chased. Quite a variety of them are very small, and the other ones are the companies have gone. So it's frustrating, but we need to develop a system to chase some of this money a bit better. Particularly the smaller ones, it's very difficult, and I see it in business myself. But we need someone to chase it down, and the simple way that we do it is on the phone. So the next week, when there's a compliance inspection by the health inspector or some of the other things that we've got issues with, we need to be chasing on the phone within a week rather than a passive way. And I see it in our business when we have health inspections. An invoice arrives a week later for the charge for $165, and that's part and parcel of doing business. But if we don't pay it, a month later, it turns up again. And if we don't pay it, it turns up again. So there's no active way that I'm seeing to pursue these small debts. And I know it's a cost, but to me, we need some sort of way of a policy that improves on this, because it adds up. The two larger debts account for over half of it within that what we're writing off, and that's disappointing. But that's where we're at. So I understand, and it's accounted for. Thank you.
Council, does anyone wish to speak against the recommendation in that report? Any further comments on the recommendation in that report? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation as printed. All those in favour say aye, raising their hands. Passed unanimously.
Aye.
Councillors, we'll go to item 9.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Mears? Mover and a seconder? No. Councillor North? Seconder, Councillor Brook. You wants to speak to that, Councillor North?
No, Mr Mayor, I'm fine.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments on that report? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just a comment just to say how good it is to see additional grant funding and other revenue things come in to cover those costs that have been budgeted through annually. But always to see green in these graphs is always good. And to talk around what that looks like. There are some capital expenses, cost in different spaces, but the long-term investment in that is really positive. And just, credit to the staff for being able to source those external grants that save community money.
Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, it's really good to read that the success of $35,000 to go towards the Youthie Grub Hub program. I can recall many years ago the first youth council who funded or received some funding for that program. The youth council members were given the opportunity to be part of that, to learn from that, and to grow as young people through that program. And the development of those young people at the time was stark. And I would suggest that will happen again with our new crop of youth councillors. So it's very nice to see that that funding has come through, and the youth council are able to launch themselves into that project at the Youthie.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Raising your hands. Carried unanimously. We'll go to item 9.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Mover and a seconder, Councillor North. Seconded, Councillor Impey. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Raising their hands. Carried unanimously. We'll move to item 9.4. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Impey, seconded Councillor North. Councillor Impey, you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I know we're going to have a conversation shortly around, how as a council, how we collect revenue and what money makes up our annual budget and where that money goes. But to see our investments continuously perform above average, is really good to see. I know that when we talk around what impact that has on us as a council, it's just below 5% of our annual revenue comes from the money that we make on investments. That's money that doesn't come from rates, that doesn't come from other fees and charges. 5% doesn't sound like much, but on average, that's close to $10 million, per year, that as a council that we're able to generate through that economic benefit from our investments, taking that pressure off. So really, it's just always good to see that those investments continuously performing above average. And what that means as a community is better outcomes. Thank you.
Any further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye, raising your hands.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move to item 9.5, Tamworth Regional Council Integrated Planning and Reporting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor North, seconder Councillor Sutherland. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to speak on dot point 1, or I. Over the last few months, I've spoken to a number of residents who've contacted me in regards to their inability to pay their rates, and they're really struggling. I know we have a hardship policy, but it basically does nothing more than defer those payments till next year. I personally had missed one payment. I came back, I was on leave. I don't recall anything from SR Law in the mail about having outstanding rates, although I knew I was behind in my payments. I came back from holidays quite unwell and spent a couple of weeks off work and in bed, basically. And then, lo and behold, I get a notice from SR Law, a court attendance notification, which jolted me that I was remit in my last two payments and paid those immediately, but I still incurred in excess of $800 in legal fees that I still have to pay. Now, I'm fortunate that I can pay those, but many of our residents are still struggling, and I can't see why we couldn't have extended this over another 2 years to let wages catch up. I spoke to another lady who's 84 years old. She's lived in a house all of her adult life, and she's now having to sell her house because she's on a fixed income. She can no longer afford her rates, and unfortunately for her, she's going to have to sell up her house and move out. So, you know, wages, pensions, incomes are not keeping up with inflation, or they haven't been up until the last 12 months or so. And there are many people struggling to even make their regular payments without severely affecting their way of life. So I still would like to see that have been brought over a longer period, the second rate variation, and I've seen some recent decisions where councils have been given more than the 2 years, and we could have done that. So just raising this on behalf of those residents who are struggling, who are suffering and can't afford the rate increase. I understand through financing how far behind we are, but I think we should develop a better system for people other than just the hardship where they're struggling to pay their rates. It's, if you can't afford them this year, deferring them to next year is not going to make that any easier. It's going to actually make it harder. And I can see in future people, again, especially those on fixed incomes, are really going to struggle to make ends meet or make their rates payments. And we write them off for big companies, and I know that's not through our own decision. We can't chase those monies. But where there's people with real hardship, I think we should be looking at that in a better way of either giving them better or greater rates relief, and or at times writing those debts off. I've also spoken to 3 other people that are in a similar position to myself, where they don't recall getting notifications from SR Law. And I'm not saying in my case I didn't get it, but I don't recall seeing it. It wasn't in my mail. And they're also now feeling like criminals because they've had court attendance notices. They're struggling to pay, and now they've got excessive or additional costs on top of that for legal fees as well. So although I'll support this, I'm very disillusioned, I guess, at the veracity of the rate increases and also the effect it's having on our residents.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe, thanks. Thank you. I believe we have not justified to the residents and ratepayers the requisite fiscal restraint or justification for another 15% tax on all landholders, businesses, farmers, pensioners and renters. We have not made the sacrifices necessary to increase the burden on fellow residents and ratepayers. There's been no review of staff numbers. In fact, council has continued to fill well-remunerated positions. When state or Commonwealth governments find their departmental budgets under stress, they don't fill vacant positions. We should take a leaf out of their books. Sending numerous people on overseas trips, sending many councillors to last week's National Local Government Conference in Canberra, including expensive hotel rooms and flights and a couple of meals each. Meanwhile, the Mayor and Deputy Mayor of Gunnedah Shire travelled by car to Canberra to save costs. The use of external consultants and reports in lieu of using internal professional staff advice. One such report related to the old athletics field, EOI. The costs of fighting frivolous land and environment court actions such as the digital sign on the corner of White and Peel Street. Increasing generous executive salaries, increasing council allowances, making no reductions to budgets, cutting the alcohol budget for post-council drinks or provision of free alcohol at annual TCMF events. We have increased red tape and cheesed off a myriad of dedicated volunteers replaced by paid employees, and that impacts the overall budget. There is still a cost of living crisis for our residents and ratepayers. Many have not seen significant wage or salary increases. We have some of the poorest postcodes in Australia. We have significant disadvantaged community members. We have businesses struggling, pensioners and other residents on fixed incomes. We should acknowledge that by not significantly burdening them further with large increases to their rates or charges. The only people applauding an increase are sycophants, sheeting the blame to other tiers of government instead of taking responsibility. We know of people being pursued by SR Law about their rates debts further burdening their financial circumstances instead of discussing payment arrangements. And it's for those reasons that, Mr Mayor, that I'll be voting against this recommendation.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Mears, if you could turn your red.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm speaking in support of the recommendation in front of us, which is a myriad of long-term strategic plans that take a long of time to pull together. It's said that as soon as one community strategic plan is adopted, we start working the next day on the next 4-year plan of what that is. You know, so this has been a massive growing document that's accumulated to what it looks like now. And there's no doubt that in days, in weeks and months, that'll be a change and adapted to suit the community needs. It's important to recognise that as a community strategic plan, this is a plan that belongs to the community. Now, it's not a council plan, but it sets the long-term direction of what our aspirations are as a region. Some of the things that really excite me within the plan is advocating for health, advocating for education, making sure the planning suits our growing communities, but also, as Councillor Rodder mentioned, trying to address some of the needs that community have identified throughout months, if not over a year of consultation, to what is that overarching, I know it's a 10-year community strategic plan, but often reviewed every 4 years, really sets what that long-term direction is. All the plans that we're adopting sit underneath that. Two documents I really want to point out. One is the delivery plan and the annual operational plan. I've mentioned before, I like the measurable outcomes that sit within it. So that's a credit to the staff who pulled that together. Now, the more we can make that more easily accessible for community to understand what it is we're aiming to achieve and how do we measure success, I think is really important. Our long-term financial plan, again, is a really broad scope. One thing I really want to point out in that is, the strategic direction to support our infrastructure. Infrastructure as an asset's probably been overlooked to somewhat over the last decade or so, but to really look at some of those venues and some of those assets that the community own and say, well, what can we do to invest in those spaces to make them more usable for the community, but also bring in more revenue. I had a conversation last week around the Trek. And as a facility, it's great, and the kitchen might need some TLC, and to be able to have a long-term financial plan that looks at managing assets in a way that can be beneficial is important, because for any of those assets to be operating at a high level, they're going to need some upfront capital. To make sure that it's captured in that plan is really important. The last point I'll make is that another one of the plans we're adopting is our workforce management plan, which talks around as an organisation what staffing looks like, talks around as an organisation how we look to recruit and retain staff. And as a local government, we're up against some really big players in the region under the state award of how we can attract quality staff and retain staff who might be poached from other organisations in other areas to get a more lucrative salary somewhere else. And so to talk around how we're breeding our own, how we're growing our own, how we're looking after them is really important to see. I know that Councillor North and some other councillors are really passionate around looking at trainee and pathway programs looking into the organisation. It's good to see that captured in that plan. So I'm speaking fully in support of all of those documents that are up there, and understanding that the more the community share their concerns, the more it can be reflected in what that long-term commitment is as a council to the community.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Further comments, councillors? Councillor North.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wanted to echo the thoughts of Councillor Sutherland. I spent most of the weekend reading these documents. There's a lot there. When you break it down, we're in a pretty exciting region. What's in the documents, there's so much that shows so much ambition there and ambitious growth that we have. Some of the targets we're setting ourselves are ambitious. We're looking at increasing visitor nights for domestic visitors by 30%. I think it's a credit that we go out there and we try and grab it. We don't just look for 2 or 3% or normal growth. We're strong with our growth. Tamworth region, we visited. We had the State of the Region addressed by the Tamworth Tomorrow Economic Update just a few weeks ago, which I'd encourage people to go onto the Tamworth Region website and have a look at some of the stats there. It's all there for us. It's showing Tamworth has grown by 5% GDP for the last 2 years. Australia's growing at 1.9 to 2%. We're outstripping that. Unemployment's at 2%. We are a vibrant, strong community. Council leads that. We set the framework to move forward with it and continue growing and have a prosperous community with all the benefits and facilities for it. It costs money to do that. And we keep investing, and I'm proud to be part of that, and I'm excited to be looking forward to the future with that. We have the SRV up as part of this. Is only a small part of this motion or this recommendation. But what it does, and what I want to highlight, everyone I hear wants to talk about roads, and we need to keep improving our roads. We invested more in it this current financial year. Starting tomorrow, next financial year, we put in $8.5 million extra into road maintenance. That's significant compared to what we're doing 2 years ago. And then it's on again the next year, and the next year, and the next year. We will see these facilities increase and get better. So we're investing in the future, and that's important. We don't want to tax our future and not invest, take the easy route. All we are doing is letting our future generations down. So I'm proud to support this motion and recommendation.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, firstly, the 9.5 is a very long item, so I'll talk to the special rate variation first. Over the last 6 years, 51 of the 128 councils across New South Wales have applied for a special rate variation. Now, that tells me that there's something systemically wrong with how the senior governments, so state and federal governments, fund local council. And that is probably something that needs to change. Otherwise, further local councils will continue to apply for special rate variations. In our region, we have a very diverse and very large council area. If we were to ask for our council to make further savings, I'm not sure where we'd make them. We have, just as some examples, entertainment school holiday programs, youthy school holiday programs, library school holiday programs, Tamworth Regional Gallery school holiday programs. Now, once upon a time, programs in libraries were funded by state government, but very few of those programs are now funded by state government, so our region, to continue to offer those programs, need to fund those ourselves. Permanent programs like the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and the Tamworth Regional Youth Council. Again, these things don't happen through thin air, they must happen through funds that come from within our organisation. Other important items such as the annual donations program, the Regional Events Marketing Support Program, the Heritage Assistance Fund. That's all money that comes from within our organisation to fund those. I think it'd be tough for a community that's growing like ours to say to a community, let's pull up on funding, let's pull up on spending, but watch some of our programs die and wither that so many people receive so much benefit from. And I'd hate to be the person who would turn around and say to somebody on the street, oh, look, sorry, we can't offer that program anymore. I know you love it, I know it's beneficial to you, but we can't run it anymore because we can't fund it. So I guess a special rate variation is more an investment of our community into our community. Taxes, unlike rates, go out of our region. We don't see most of that money ever again, it goes somewhere else. But rates is all spent in our region. And that's something that benefits all of our people. And I, for one, am a ratepayer and a taxpayer. I'd be much happier to pay a little bit more in rates than taxes if it means keeping our community flourishing and thriving and growing, etc. Now, I'll finish on one small comment. I just need to find it. Okay, a declining comparative income from general rates, increased costs to deliver services and infrastructure, coupled with a reduction in available government funding with a growing community, which expects increased infrastructure and services in both volume and diversity, can only result in one thing, and that's an economic disaster. By asking for a special rate variation, we're preventing our community from having to go through that economic disaster. Now, just another little point that I noticed in item 1.5, and that was within just a couple of little extras. Within the fees and charges, a couple of items of note. Long-term airport parking of 1 week or more, a 25% increase. So it's an interesting note there. However, good news, aquatic facilities, no increase from 25 to 26 on single entry charges and 10 to 20 week entry booklets. So those who like to casually use our aquatic facilities, there's no increase from this year to next year for you, which is good news. No increase in our visitor costs for the region's museums, apart from the Power Station Museum, where there's been a fee for adults up by 40%, but it's an increase from $3 to $5, so it's a very small increase. It's also great to see spectator and disabled care entry into the sports dome as nil cost. However, spectator entry into our aquatic facilities still comes at a small cost. Perhaps we could consider a nil cost into our aquatic facilities for those who are spectators and carers, as we do for the sports dome. However, disabled caregivers are still able to access our aquatics facilities at no cost, which is nice. So, in summary, I agree with Councillor North in that we do have a very exciting future in our community. We can grow together, but by investing in our community together, we have a much better case of building a stronger, more resilient community together.
Thanks, Councillor Impey. Further comments from other councillors? Councillor Book.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We've had 3 for and 2 against, and unfortunately I'm going to add to the voices speaking against this item. Primarily on the first dot point, you're talking about the special rate variation. I know it's not going to be a popular decision to make within council. I know this is going to be labelled as populist, but after a lot of consideration, I still believe this to be the correct position to hold. I do agree with Councillor Impey that it's clear to me that we don't have adequate funding to repair and maintain our assets. But I think the people of our region, throughout the entire SRV process and throughout the council elections last year, have clearly expressed to us that they expect us to likewise tighten our belts while they are struggling to pay bills and put food on the table. That being said, I fully acknowledge that the special rate variation has come about because of a faulty rate peg system, coupled with chronic underfunding of local government by other tiers of government. Local government New South Wales has observed a 78% increase in cost shifting onto local government between 2017 and 2022, and this has just increased since then. There's just been a state government parliamentary inquiry into this, which resolved, and I quote, "Even in councils that focus on the provision of basic services, the community heard clear evidence that the rate peg has not kept pace with the level of income councils require to adequately meet the needs of their communities. Now, I'm hoping that the already locked in first half of the special rate variation that the previous council decided to adopt last year will help with this. And I guess I want to make the point that our situation here isn't unique, but it is incredibly painful in our residents. And I hope we can minimise the impact of this financial blow to our residents by potentially looking to not adopt the second half of it. I don't know if my vote will be enough, but I went to the election stating my position of wanting to do what I can to help ease the cost of living pressure on residents caused by the SRV. And after a lot of deliberation, I think that's still the right position to stick with. And this does pay me to take this position, partly because of the length of this particular item, because I don't necessarily want to oppose some of the other plans in there, like our community strategic plan and like our delivery plan. I do have some issues with how those items have come to us tonight, in that I don't believe we have had adequate time to read some of the community response to that. We did have a meeting about this before this council meeting, which I did appreciate, and I do need to highlight that. But in the end, this is I do need to make a decision on this, and I think I've made my decision.
Councillor Rook. Councillor Budd.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologise for the slight time delay. Look, I've listened to all the speakers, they're saying, but in summary, every councillor at that table has been given the same thorough and exact briefing on what this SRV Stage 2 means to our budget moving forward, and in particular what it means to our budget moving forward if it doesn't get approved. If it doesn't get approved, then all of the aspirations of community in terms of those potholes and roads and a whole lot of other minor infrastructure projects will be threatened. For me, to not support this is almost an act of financial incompetence. I speak for the motion, and particularly part one. This has to pass through for the future of Tamworth region. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Budd. Before I ask Councillor North, does he want to say any words to close the debate? I'll just make a couple of comments. First off, from a few comments made tonight, we do have a hardship policy, and if there is anyone out there that needs to come and talk to our staff in finance about a payment plan for rates that they can't afford at that very point in time, they need to make contact with council because we don't know that they're in trouble unless they contact us. And I think that's a message I need to get out to our wider community. If you're in trouble and you're finding it difficult to pay your rates, come and talk to us, and it won't go to SR Law. It'll be an agreement and a plan that we'll put together in consultation with yourselves who are finding it yourselves in a difficult situation, and we'll find a way forward. That's the way it's worked in the past, but people, you have to come to us if you're in that situation. Secondly, every councillor sitting around this table and those who are away sat in front of a workshop that talked about our roads and general infrastructure, and in particular the roads, where 66% roughly of our rate increase is going to go towards road maintenance and road construction. That if we don't do something now, the next generation of ratepayers will not be able to afford to carry out the repairs that need to be carried out, which will mean that you'll see tarred roads turned into dirt roads, and we'll just have a mess. Something that we do not want, and I certainly don't want to leave a legacy as an individual and a mayor, a legacy to the next generation of ratepayers, the next generation of councillors, whether it be 5 or 10 years away, finding themselves in a situation because we didn't make a hard decision now to do what we've got to do to keep those maintenance schedules in place and increase them. We're going to leave them burdened with something they can never fix. That would be, I think that would be totally wrong of us to do that. And of course, thirdly, I would just like to say to all the councillors that sit at the table, you're all truly aware, well aware of what other councils around the state are doing. And neighbouring councils have put up their rates a lot more in percentage terms than what we have. And they've had to do that because they've found themselves in very difficult situations. The last point I'll make is that the 15% actually is inclusive of a 3.8% rate cap that the government have given us anyway. So it is not what it's, to the eye, I suppose you could say, it's not what it seems in terms of 15% on top of everything else. It's 15% inclusive of the 3.8%. Councillor North, I'll ask if you wish to say any words to close the debate.
I will just quickly on backing up that, so it's an 11.2% increase that we're actually asking for on top of the rate peg that would have come through at 3.8. That's right, so it's not all of it. I did want to mention too that we're putting some of this money into assisting pensioners with their rates too. And that's something that's been overlooked, the pensioner rebate for rates. I don't have the figures here exactly in front of me, but that's important to note, and they shouldn't be backward in coming forward or asking for that assistance there, as well as people in hardship. We do need this money. This recommendation isn't just about the SRV, it's about all the documents we've got with regard to our planning for the future as well. So we should be proud of that, and that's what I was speaking to. So we'll look at this at the moment and move forward, and as I said, we'll move forward as a vibrant community.
Thanks, Councillor North. Well, that closes the debate. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of the printed recommendation, raise their hands. That's 5. All those opposed? So, staff, we have a division. We have Councillor Rodder, Brooke and Mears opposed to the recommendation, and we have Councillor Impey, North, Sutherland, Budd and myself supporting the recommendation. So we have, it's a 5-3 vote. So that's carried. Thank you. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 10, Community Services. We have 10.1. Could I have a mover and a second? To move, Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Brooke. Councillor Sutherland, you should speak to that.
Yes, Mr Mayor. And I'd like to just firstly point out, speaking in favour of the 100% subsidy, is that the report reflects the email that was sent through by the Director around the adjustment of what that total figure is. And NAIDOC Week is a national celebration on our community calendar. Now, it's a significant event that occurs every year that involves or engages over 10,000 people across our region to participate in NAIDOC activities. All of these events are community-driven and community-led. I understand that the subsidy amount in front of us is significant. That is due to state and federal governments who didn't come to the table as have in previous years. And so I anticipate that this money being really the last time that we'll have to go through this justification, now that we've moved into signing a formal partnership agreement with the Murrungalli Agreement, should attract really easy state and federal revenue streams to be able to support community to celebrate and put on NAIDOC events. I'm right to keep speaking?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. You know, the two main events that are captured in the fee waiver are the Debutante Ball and the event celebrating our elders throughout NAIDOC Week. Now, the Debutante Ball is a part of a youth Aboriginal women's leadership program that runs for 10 to 12 weeks. Now, that's a 12-week youth leadership program supporting over 20 young Aboriginal women to go through that process of youth leadership, cultivating in a Debutante Ball. That process is heavily supported by a number of different organisations, but majority community-led. You know, and so I know that looking through the report is really well written, talking around the commitments to closing the gap. But another strategic commitment I think that hasn't been mentioned is the outcomes that's identified within our youth strategic plan. You know, in our youth strategy, it's really clearly focused that committing, I think it's focus area number 4, which is that young people are connected and valued by their community. Now, as a council, we work really hard in making sure young people's voices are seen and heard. And the fee waiver or the subsidy for that event at the Trek for the Debutante Ball is really making sure that those young women are celebrated to their full extent after going through that process. We know, and there's evident research that talks around communities that have strong women, and the role of women in leadership within communities makes regions better. And so I just want to make sure that that lens is put over when we talk around supporting the debutante ball, because it's a massive investment for the future of our community, supporting leadership in young women. The second major cost is obviously the Elders' Lunch. That Elders Get-Together is the largest gathering of Aboriginal elders this side of the Great Dividing Range in New South Wales. Last year, there were just around 200 Aboriginal people, elders who attended that. Obviously, some of those had carers and family members, and so it's a significant event. Again, this is a massive or a significant investment as a council to invest in our elder community, especially from an Aboriginal perspective, where people from that generation in our Aboriginal community have had a different experience. So to be able to provide spaces now where they're valued, where they're seen, where they get the recognition and celebration that they deserve, again, is a significant investment by us as a council into the residents of communities. So I'm in full support of supporting the 100% subsidy as recommended by staff in the body of the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I might just, can you turn?
Make a comment?
Just for the benefit of those that are in the audience and those listening online. So the report mentioned that the subsidy was $44,748. The actual figure that council would be waiving tonight, if they agreed with the recommendation, would be $36,364.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. 36,000 sounds a whole lot better, doesn't it? We do know last year council supported this event or events with $20,614.60. So I think it's further evidence, and I don't mean to sort of keep banging on this, but it's further evidence that says that without a special rate variation both this time and last time, council's ability to be able to support events like this, which are going to bring an incredible amount of social value to our community, would be a heck of a lot harder because we wouldn't have the cream there to make these supportive, support possible. So I'm all supportive of this particular recommendation, and I look forward to being able to hear from those students who attend my school and other schools who might be involved in a lot of these events in one way or another on how it personally benefits them and helps them grow so that they can then become good young people as part of a community, whether it be here or elsewhere, and flourish in their lives ahead of them.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor North.
I'll just make some brief comments. I came in with regard to this recommendation pretty neutral. I'm not sure where I was going to go because I have conflicting thoughts and thinkings, and particularly after the SRV, and we're trying to save dollars. We gave slightly over 20,000 last year, 36,000, it's a fair bit more this year, so I worry about what we're going to be doing in the future. But I think Councillor Sutherland certainly makes some pretty strong arguments about the leadership of these young women at the Debutantes Ball for 10 or 12 weeks. That's strong, and I think they're the future of the community. So I'll be supporting this recommendation, but we certainly need to look at what we're doing in the future with this, because I don't want to see it growing out of hand.
Thanks, Councillor North. Further comments, councillors? There being no further... Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just like to support the words of Councillor Sutherland. I think it's incredibly important that we further engage with our Aboriginal residents. I'd like to see, if possible, moving forward, that instead of having to apply for subsidies, that we could factor this into our strategic plan and have those funds available without the necessity of waiving fees, where we can build that into our infrastructure. I know people are contentious about it, but as I said to Councillor Sutherland earlier, although we all own our land here and bought land and we're all part of the community as well, I think we should always remember that we are on Aboriginal land, always was and always will be. And if we can do anything to support those communities aspiring for improvement, as we do with all communities, then I think it's a really good thing.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye, raising their hand.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move from there on to 10.2 and I call for a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Brooke. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? There being no further comments, Councillor Brooke.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'll make it quick. I just want to point out that I appreciate the focus on events held outside of Tamworth City and within the wider region as part of the selection criteria.
Thanks, Councillor Brooke. Any further comments? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye and raise their hand. Carried unanimously. Councillors, that takes us out of open council to reports to be considered in closed. I'll ask the General Manager, have we had any requests for any of those items in closed to be held in open?
No, Mr.
Is there any request from members of the audience for items in closed to be held in open? There is none. So, councillors, I'll ask for a motion to move into closed council. Move Councillor Sutherland, second Councillor North. All those in favour say aye, raising your hand. Thank you. To open council for the General Manager report. Councillor Mears, second to Councillor Brooke. All those in favour say aye. Carried. We right in open council? All good? Mr General Manager, can you report on that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 30th of June 2025. In closed council this evening, council considered 2 items of business. For both of those items, you adopted the recommendations as per your business paper.